This is Holy Week for kids. Um, the majority of Holy Week is actually the last 3 days: Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday. Um, the One of the things that's really important to pay attention to when you're talking with kids is what their level of acceptance of gruesome is, because this is a dark story. And so often churches have chosen not to include children, so they go from Palm Sunday straight to Easter Sunday, and they don't understand what the big celebration is, because they go from parade to happy time with chocolate. And it's really important that they go through Holy Week to understand why Easter is so important. And they go on that downward slope from Palm Sunday through to the darkness that is Good Friday. And by the way, good is actually it shows how difficult the English language can be sometimes. The best way to interpret that is Holy Friday or God's Friday or Morning Friday. It's not good. And the kids will probably pick up on that really, really fast as to why do we call it Good Friday. So going through the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, read the scripture. You have the scripture list in um, the calendar for Lent. So follow through and take more of the story if you want to. Go to the scriptures. If you've got children's Bibles, read it through there if they've got enough detail in them. And go bit by bit. At this point, we're not worrying about theology. So there's nothing in this story that you can't answer aside from historical significant things. Um, and I'll try to give you a few of those answers so you have that as you go. But don't worry that there's something you're missing in the story, because you're not missing anything. This is a dramatic narrative, just like any movie or any cartoon that the kids have seen. The story itself should not scare them if you talk it through with them and let their questions lead you, because they'll probably have lots of questions. Why the church even remembers this is a big one. And the answer to that is so we can celebrate the resurrection, that Jesus rose from the dead after he was dead for 3 days. The 3 day one, um, that has confused people, because if we count in our North American way, it's only 2 days: Friday to Saturday, Saturday to Sunday. But at the time of the gospel writing, and for Jesus himself in the Hebrew culture, a new day began at sundown. So essentially, Friday, when Jesus died, he had to be taken down before sundown, because sundown started the Passover celebration. It was also the beginning of Sabbath. And in Hebrew culture, the Sabbath allowed no work whatsoever. So taking Jesus' body down would have been work. So they had to make sure that that didn't happen. But um, being that he died on the Friday, it meant by sundown of Friday, a new day was beginning. So it's Friday to Saturday, um, sundown Saturday to Sunday. So that makes it 3 days along the way. A lot of people have been confused about that. There's nothing in the story that is inherently dark or destructive. There's no real boogeyman. There's no real bad guy, and this is something that is hard to understand, and the kids might pick up on it. For instance, Pilate and Caiaphas keep bouncing Jesus back and forth because they don't really want a deal. They're put pressure. The pressure's been put on them by the priests, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees at the temple. So you can point out that this is really political. Is that both Caiaphas and Pilate understand what will happen? That the people will riot if something isn't done about Jesus, but neither one of them want that responsibility. So you can talk about that. Caiaphas was responsible for the Galilean territory, and because Jesus was Galilean, he would have been the one to have the authority. But all of this took place in Jerusalem, which put it under Pilate's authority, so Pilate has to choose. So the political aspect is something you can really expand upon if you've got kids that ask questions about that. And at the end, Pilate is the one that finally makes the decision. And you see him washing his hands because he does not want to have this staining him. Now, this is something that comes up in the character of Lady Macbeth in Hamlet. This is something that it was part of the Hebrew culture when they put all of their sins on an animal. They would wash their hands symbolically of getting rid of the responsibility of what has just happened. So Pilate washes his hands. He does not want to be seen as responsible for the death of Jesus, even though he is ultimately the one to do the act. The priests had no power in this. They were trying to maintain a status quo that Jesus and his followers did not think should exist, but they could not do the job of executing Jesus. And one of the things throughout our 2,000 years of history is that many Christians have blamed the Jews for the death of Jesus. That's not the way it went. It's not historically accurate or valid, and it has caused a lot of damage. The pogroms, the Holocaust, denying Jewish folks economic opportunity, migration opportunities. This is all as a result from people misinterpreting this part of Scripture. So when you do read the Scripture and you come across where it says the Jews did whatever, reread that as the Judeans. So those who lived in Jerusalem and around Jerusalem. It's the Judeans. Just a point of history, Jews, as we recognize them now in modernity, did not even exist as a group of people until about somewhere between the 4th and the 8th centuries of the Common Era. They were descendants from the Hebrew folks through the Pharisees, but they did not have that title or that name for centuries after Jesus' closest followers would have died. So we're not talking Jews, even though the Bible has made that bad translation. So you can correct that as it goes. One of the things you can do with children as they're asking questions about this is encouraging them to have the perspective and the point of view of various characters. What is Mary Magdalene thinking? What is Mary of Nazareth? Jesus' mother was there. So what is she thinking as she watches all this happen to her son? What is Peter thinking when he denies Jesus 3 times? What is Judas thinking that he betrays Jesus to the Roman guards and to the priests? What is going on for all these people? And that might help your kids have a little more ownership of the story. If they can imagine what they would have done next, imagine where they would have gone, where would they have been tired, would they have been sad, would they have been scared, all of that you can work out with them. Using symbols. So we've got a lot of symbols through the story. It's quite rich with it. We start with Maundy Thursday, and Maundy means giving. So Maundy Thursday, we have in some Gospels we have foot washing. It's not in Mark this year. We have the bread and the wine. If you are a family that allows your children to have a little taste of wine with communion, you might want to share this with them. Juice is just fine, but break the bread together. The liturgical term for that would be agape, which is a love feast, a sharing feast. So you're not actually doing communion or Eucharist with them. You're just doing the actions that show what might have been going on at the time. So don't worry about getting in trouble or that you shouldn't be handling bread and wine in this instance. You're simply storytelling. Nails. One of the things I've been very successful with over the years is if you put large nails in the freezer for a little bit and then put them on the hand of probably older children. You can decide if your younger children are able to handle this. But put them in the hands of the older children so they get a shock of the cold of the nail, but it makes them think about what that must have been like to go through Jesus' hand. They might even become curious about how the hand is designed and whether the nail would have torn the hand apart if it had just been the nail. And then you can point out that no, they tied Jesus' wrists to the cross as well, so that that wouldn't happen. The Crown of Thorns. Most of us don't have thorns around this time of year unless you've got roses, but toothpicks work to make kids kind of feel that prickly feel to it. Let them know that Jesus was beaten. He was treated horribly before he was executed. That's part of the story too. Like they were really, really angry. You beat up people you're really angry with. You don't just let them walk away. So they were really angry with Jesus for everything that he had done and all the crowds that he had round up and gotten really anxious and probably on the verge of exploding in some ways. Um, the crucifixion itself. One of the things I've been quite successful in teaching kids about crucifixion is to have them hold their arms out. And you grab underneath their arms and then tell them to drop their legs so their entire weight is being supported by you holding their arms. They will find it very difficult to breathe, and you can ask them this, tell them to take a deep breath, and they probably can't. Kids today don't understand crucifixion, but they can understand what that must have felt like, how Jesus didn't have an opportunity to take a deep breath. So that's something really basic that kids enjoy is a really weird word, but they really do kind of get off on that whole being held and not being able to breathe. It's another physical, tactile way for you to share the story. Now, moving into the Easter Vigil. The Easter Vigil is the ceremony can look differently depending on your tradition. Um, Anglicans and the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox actually have vigils written out with various scriptures and various songs and hymns that they sing. Protestant churches tend not to have something that's a standard every year, but there's an entire wealth of scripture in the Gospels, well, the entire Bible, in fact, if you want to use that. And the whole idea of these vigil scriptures is to tell the story from beginning to end, so that you can see God working in the world even before Jesus came to be. So that's one thing to do with vigil. For older kids, one thing that I thought would have had great success with is having them stay up as a wake over. They might be grumpy the next morning and tired, and you can decide whether you want to have that in your household or not. But having them stay awake um, and read scripture and realize it's not just a playtime, although you can have playtime there if you want. But even if they come back every hour and read a new story and then go off and do their thing and then come back in the next hour, that's quite possible. Candles. Um, if you have a dedicated Christ candle, you should extinguish it on Good Friday. So to symbolize that Jesus has died. You light it again Easter morning. So keep that candle around where everybody can see it, so they can see that it is extinguished. Jesus is dead. There is nothing happening there. In the meantime, though, you can have other candles that you light in prayer. There's something quite fantastic about being in prayer in a room full of candles. There's an extra level of intimacy there that can help you feel like this is something heavy that we're part of, and recognize that people around the world are doing it with you this year. One of the other benefits of COVID is because we're not going to spend this holiday with family, you can really delve down on the religious part of this without worrying about all the shopping and the food preparation that you might have had some other year. So you can really feel it. Come Easter Sunday, if you have an opportunity to watch the sunrise together, or even you with just a couple of kids, I would encourage you to go for it. It's particularly fantastic when you watch it come up over the water and you see the water glow as the sun rises. There's something deeply spiritual about that. And trust me, as a kid who grew up doing this memory will never leave them. There is something profound about watching the sunrise on Easter morning. Now, if you've been doing fasting and you have been cutting out food in your family, Easter is a really good time to bring all those foods back. So if you have not had sugar or pancakes or anything throughout the entirety of Lent, it's a really good idea to do that on Easter morning. And then the kids will know it comes back. Also, don't forget the balloon. While you're doing all this while you're doing all this Holy Week stuff with your kids, try to find a helium balloon. And they put away the Alleluias, if you remember, right at the very, very beginning. Now is the time to find those again and put them where the kids can find them. So the Alleluias come back on Easter Sunday. And have that ready. And you'll need to do that before Easter Sunday, of course. Um, Otherwise, just walk the path with the kids. Keep it as simple or as complicated as you want to, but follow their lead. They will ask you questions. There will be great curiosity there, especially if you let them know you are willing to talk about anything. If you are really hard pressed for an answer and you do not know what's going on, please contact me through this website and I will give you the answer. There's a lot of stuff on the internet that is just not in keeping with how the majority of Protestants understand this. And I would really encourage you to talk to someone who you trust to have a really sound opinion on this rather than trying to find it yourself on the internet where you might get some wild and wacky things that are not the least bit helpful to what you want. But in the process, enjoy your kids. Enjoy how they're looking at all of this and bringing all the symbols together because they will do a lot of this work for you. So you just have to provide them with answers and props and keep an eye on the calendar and it'll all come together.